You want to know why nobody messes with humans anymore? The Arxian bartender's phosphorescent tentacles flickered with amusement as he polished a crystalline drinking vessel. Pull up a gravity cushion, friend. This tale's worth your time. His customer, a young Centaurian diplomat fresh from the academy, settled their four-legged frame onto the hovering cushion. Their sensor stalks twitched with curiosity. I mean, surely the stories are exaggerated. The diplomat clicked hopefully. The archives speak of them surviving conditions that would instantly kill most sentient species, but... exaggerated? The bartender's bioluminescent patterns shifted to a deep indigo of remembered fear. Let me tell you about the incident at Proxima Station. I was there, you know. Back when the hegemony thought they could simply requisition Earth and its resources. The diplomat's scales rippled with interest. Everyone had heard whispers about the failed invasion, but first-hand accounts were rare. It started, as these things often do, with bureaucratic idiocy of the highest order. Some bright spark in hegemony high command decided that since humans came from what they classified as a death world, they must be too primitive to have achieved true sentience. Therefore, their colonization rights could be legally revoked. The bartender's tentacles writhed in dark amusement. Oh, how wrong they were. He paused to serve another patron before continuing. You see, what the hegemony failed to understand was that surviving on a death world doesn't make a species primitive. It makes them resilient and creative, and really, really good at turning everyday objects into weapons. Surely not, the diplomat began. Did you know, the bartender interrupted, that humans invented something called improvisational engineering during the war? The hegemony's top military analysts still can't figure out how they turned a standard food synthesizer into what they called a railgun, using nothing but spare parts and something they termed duct tape. The diplomat's sensor stalks drooped in disbelief. Oh, that's nothing, the bartender continued, warming to his subject. Wait until you hear about what they did with the station's artificial gravity systems. You know how most species go catatonic in zero-G? Humans? They trained in it, called it parkour in space, turned the entire station into their personal playground. He gestured with a tentacle at the bar's ceiling. The hegemony forces thought they had the upper hand when they cut gravity in Section 7. Next thing they know, humans are bouncing off walls, using fire extinguishers as propulsion devices, and treating the whole thing like some kind of combat sport. They were laughing, friend. Laughing. The diplomat's scales had taken on a distinctly pale hue. But that's impossible. The physical strain alone. Impossible? The bartender's bioluminescence pulsed with remembered amazement. Let me tell you about impossible. You know what humans call a fractured bone, a minor inconvenience. I watched a human commander continue directing troops with what their medic called a simple break in their leg. They just splinted it and kept going. Said they'd had worse playing rugby, whatever that is. He leaned in closer, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. But here's the real kicker. You know what finally made the hegemony surrender? It wasn't the improvised weapons. It wasn't the zero-G warfare. It wasn't even their terrifying ability to ignore injuries that would incapacitate any reasonable species. The diplomat leaned forward, sensor stalks quivering. It was their ability to cooperate. The bartender's tentacles swayed in remembered awe. See, the hegemony thought that by threatening Earth, they'd force the human colonies to surrender. Instead, it united them. Every human settlement, every outpost, every single ship with a human crew suddenly started working together with this scary efficiency. He began mixing a drink with practiced motions. They have this concept called spite. As far as we can tell, it's the ability to continue fighting not because you think you can win, but because you want to make absolutely certain your enemy loses. Combined with their talent for improvisation, he shuddered. Terrifying. The archives mentioned something about psychological warfare? The diplomat ventured. The bartender's bioluminescence flickered in what might have been a chuckle. Oh yes, the humans have this thing they call memes. During the war, they started broadcasting these modified image files across all hegemony communication channels. Most were incomprehensible, but they all ended with something called a rickroll. The hegemony's cybersecurity experts still have nightmares about it. He set a completed drink in front of the diplomat. But you want to know the absolute worst thing about humans? The thing that makes every species in the galaxy think twice about provoking them? The diplomat nodded, sensor stalks rigid with attention. They forgave us. The bartender's tentacles drooped slightly. After everything the hegemony did, after all the fighting and death and destruction, they just forgave. Said holding grudges took too much energy, offered to help rebuild, started sharing their technology, including those terrifying improvised weapons designs, just in case anyone else got ideas, they said. He gestured at the drink he'd prepared. This? Human recipe. They call it a Long Island iced tea. Perfectly safe for Centaurians. They made sure all their drink recipes included variants for every known species biology. After the war, while they were still treating their wounded. The diplomat stared at the drink with newfound respect. That's why nobody messes with humans anymore, the bartender concluded. Not because they're strong, though they are. Not because they're clever, though they certainly can be. Not even because they can survive things that would kill most species. No, it's because they'll fight you with everything they have, break every rule you thought you understood about warfare, possibly kill you with kindness, and then invite you out for drinks afterward and genuinely mean it. He began polishing another glass. The hegemony learned that lesson the hard way. These days, even the most aggressive species think twice about provoking humans. After all, his bioluminescence shifted to a complex pattern indicating wry amusement. Nobody wants to be the next subject of what humans call an instructional video on why starting wars is a bad idea. The diplomat took a thoughtful sip of their drink. This is surprisingly good. Of course it is, the bartender replied. Humans invented it specifically to, and I quote, talk shit and make friends. Which, when you think about it, rather perfectly sums up their entire approach to galactic diplomacy. In the comfortable silence that followed, the diplomat noticed a small plaque behind the bar. It read, "This establishment proudly serves beings of all species, including deathworlders. First drink is on the house for former hegemony combat veterans. Management." Below it, someone had added in what appeared to be human handwriting. "Because the galaxy's more fun when we're all friends. Even if we had to kick your ass first." The diplomat's translator took a moment to process the symbol at the end. When it finally did, they nearly dropped their drink. It was a heart. The humans had ended their post-war message with the symbol for the organ that keeps their terrifying bodies alive. The bartender's bioluminescence flickered in what was definitely amusement now. Yes, that was exactly my reaction too. Still not sure if it's meant to be threatening or endearing. With humans, somehow it manages to be both. He began preparing another drink, this one glowing slightly. You know what the really interesting thing is? Since they joined the galactic community properly, the number of interspecies conflicts has dropped by 78%. Turns out nobody wants to start a fight when the designated peacekeepers are a species that treats orbital drops as, and I quote, a fun way to arrive at parties. The diplomat finished their drink, their sensor stalk swaying in contemplation. I believe, they said carefully. I understand now why my superiors suggested I take this posting on the human diplomatic station. Oh? The bartender's tentacles curled in curiosity. Yes, they said it would be educational. The diplomat's scales shifted to a pattern indicating dawning comprehension. Though they failed to mention that the education would include learning why challenging humans is categorized as suicidally stupid in our tactical databases. Could be worse? The bartender offered cheerfully. At least you're learning it from stories rather than first-hand experience. Like the hegemony did. True. The diplomat raised their empty glass. Another round, please. I believe I need to better understand this human concept of talking shit and making friends. Coming right up, the bartender replied, his tentacles moving in practiced motions. Though I should warn you, this is how most species end up with human friends. They're surprisingly easy to get along with, for deathworlders. Is that a bad thing? Not at all. Just be prepared for them to invite you to something called a barbecue. And whatever you do, don't ask them to explain what a yeet is. We lost 3 linguistic analysts trying to decode that one. The diplomat's scales flickered in what might have been laughter. Around them, the station hummed with the sound of dozens of species living, working, and yes, drinking together in peace. All because humanity had decided that making friends was more interesting than holding grudges. Well, that and the fact that nobody wanted to risk finding out what other everyday objects humans could turn into weapons. Some lessons the galaxy had learned only needed to be taught once. Somewhere in the station, a human sneezed. 3 different species instinctively ducked for cover, then tried to pretend they hadn't. The human apologized and offered them tissues. Just another normal day in human space. Tell me another story about the humans. the diplomat requested, their sensor stalks swaying with the effects of their third Long Island iced tea. Preferably one that explains why my tactical training included the phrase, "Never challenge a human to do something they consider impossible." The bartender's tentacles rippled with what might have been a suppressed laugh. Ever heard about the Rigelian Challenge? The one that led to humans being banned from participating in any more impossible task competitions? That's the one. The bartender began mixing another drink, his bioluminescence pulsing with remembered amusement. See, the Rigelians pride themselves on their logical thinking. They created this competition series meant to demonstrate the futility of attempting certain physical feats, had mathematical proofs showing why each challenge was impossible. He paused to serve another patron before continuing. Then humanity joined the galactic community. Someone, and we still don't know who, but I suspect it was a Rigelian graduate student with more curiosity than sense, sent them an invitation. Oh no, the diplomat clicked softly. Oh yes, the bartender's tentacles waved in emphasis. The humans took one look at the list of impossible challenges and treated it like something they called a bucket list. First challenge was to survive in hard vacuum for more than 30 seconds without a suit. But that's impossible? That's what everyone thought. Then a human named Jackson showed up with something they called vacuum training and some modified emergency oxygen protocols. Survived for 45 seconds. Said the experience was, and I quote, kind of tingly. The diplomat's scales paled. How? Apparently, humans had been researching vacuum exposure since before they achieved spaceflight, just to see if they could. They have this thing called the Tardigrade Initiative, a whole research program dedicated to pushing the limits of human survival in space. He began preparing another round of drinks, but that wasn't even the best part. The Rigelians had this challenge they considered the ultimate proof of impossibility. Surviving immersion in fluoroantimonic acid. Their mathematicians had proven that no known biological material could withstand it. What happened? The humans showed up with something they called experimental protective gear, cobbled together from mining equipment and spacecraft hull materials. Said if the acid ate through it, they had backup plans involving force fields and something called really good timing. The bartender's bioluminescence flickered to a pattern indicating both awe and horror. The Rigelians withdrew that challenge before the humans could attempt it. Said they'd reviewed humanity's previous Hold My Beer incidents and decided they didn't want to be responsible for whatever would happen next. Hold my beer? The diplomat's translator struggled with the phrase. Human ritual phrase. Roughly translates to, watch me do something spectacularly inadvisable. Usually preceded by someone saying something is impossible. He gestured at the bar around them. That's actually how this establishment got started. Human walks into a Rigelian logic hall, hears them discussing how interspecies bars couldn't work because of biological incompatibilities. You can guess what happened next. The diplomat looked around with new appreciation at the various species enjoying their perfectly calibrated drinks. They solved the biochemical compatibility issues just to prove it could be done? Took them less than a standard solar cycle. They called it applied xenobiology with a motivation. Created this whole database of safe drinks for every known species. Even included hangover cures. The bartender's tentacles moved in what might have been a shrug. That's humans for you. Tell them something's impossible, and they take it as a personal challenge. Tell them it might help people make friends, and they'll move mountains to make it happen. Is that a metaphor? I wish. Look up Project Friendship Bridge sometime. Humans literally moved a mountain because someone said it was in the way of building an interspecies cultural center. The diplomat's sensor stalks drooped slightly. I'm beginning to understand why my species' first contact protocols include the warning, do not attempt to apply logic to human decisions. Smart policy, the bartender agreed, though not as smart as the Arxian Diplomatic Corps' addition to their manual. If a human says they have a crazy idea that might just work, evacuate the area immediately. They really are fascinating, aren't they? The diplomat watched as a human across the bar attempted to teach a group of Ventusians something called thumb wrestling. The Ventusians, lacking thumbs, had improvised with their prehensile antennae. Somehow it seemed to be working. That's one word for it, the bartender replied. Terrifying is another. But you know what's really interesting? They've actually gotten more reasonable since joining the galactic community. More reasonable than what? Than they were when they were stuck on their death world. Apparently before they achieved spaceflight, they used to do things like jump out of perfectly functional aircraft for fun. They called it skydiving. The diplomat's scales rippled in disbelief. But why? Because it was there? That's usually their explanation. That or someone bet me I couldn't. The bartender's tentacles waved in a pattern indicating resignation. The really worrying part is that they've started combining their old hobbies with new technology. Ever heard of orbital skydiving? I'm afraid to ask. Good instinct. Let's just say there's a reason why human space stations have special insurance policies. He began mixing another drink. Though I have to admit, they've made the galaxy a more interesting place. Did you know they introduced something called interspecies game night? Is that safe? Surprisingly, yes. They're very careful about adapting games to different physiologies. Though there was that incident with Monopoly. What happened? 3-day game. Almost caused a diplomatic incident. Now there's a warning label on all copies sold in human space. Caution. May strain international relations. House rules not recognized by any galactic court. The diplomat finished their drink, their sensor stalks swaying thoughtfully. You know, when I took this diplomatic posting, I expected to be dealing with dangerous, unpredictable deathworlders. Instead you found out they're dangerous, unpredictable deathworlders who want to be everyone's friend and will rewrite the laws of physics if that's what it takes to make it happen. The bartender's bioluminescence pulsed with amusement. Yeah, that's usually how it goes. Just wait until they invite you to something called a karaoke night. Should I be worried? Depends. How do you feel about humans attempting to sing in frequencies they technically shouldn't be able to produce, just because someone mentioned that some species can hear in different ranges? They wouldn't. They already have. There's a whole research project dedicated to expanding human vocal ranges to be more inclusive of different species' hearing capabilities. He began cleaning a glass. Last I heard, they'd managed to replicate Jovian subsonic communication frequencies using something called throat singing. The diplomat's scales shifted to a pattern indicating both impressed and disturbed. How do they keep surviving things that should kill them? That, said a human voice behind them, is actually a really interesting story involving spite, stupidity, and something we call evolutionary optimization through poor decision-making. The diplomat turned to find a human grinning at them, holding what appeared to be a drink that was actually on fire. Pull up a chair. The bartender sighed, his tentacles already reaching for the fire suppression system. This is going to be a long one. The human's grin widened. Ever wonder why we have 2 of most organs? Turns out, redundancy is really useful when you make a hobby out of surviving unsurvivable things. The diplomat settled in for another story, their sensor stalks twitching with anticipation. Around them, the bar continued its impossible existence, serving its impossible drinks to its improbably friendly patrons. Just another night in human space, where the impossible was merely a suggestion, and you can't was treated as a personal challenge. Wait, the diplomat interrupted, their sensor stalks vibrating with curiosity. You have backup organs? Kind of. The humans settled into their seat, carefully setting down their still flaming drink. It's more like we have extra capacity. Take lungs, for instance. We can function pretty well with just one. Same with kidneys. And our liver? That thing can regenerate. Pretty useful when you're from a planet that basically tries to kill you every chance it gets. The bartender's tentacles rippled in what might have been exasperation. Are you going to tell them about the appendix? Oh, right. We have this organ that nobody really knows what it does. Might be a backup for gut bacteria. Might be evolutionary leftovers. We just know it occasionally tries to kill us, so we remove it and carry on like nothing happened. The diplomat's scales had taken on a distinctly worried hue. Your own organs. Try to kill you? Sometimes. But hey, that's why we evolved pain tolerance. The human took a sip of their flaming drink, seemingly unbothered by the fact that it was still, in fact, on fire. You know what's really cool? Our bones can repair themselves. Break a bone and it'll often heal stronger than before. That explains... The diplomat began. The incident at Jupiter Station? The bartender suggested. When that human maintenance worker broke their arm but finished repairing the critical life support systems before seeking medical attention? Actually, the human grinned. I was on Jupiter Station during that. That was my Aunt May. She said the bone could wait but oxygen couldn't. Called it a practical application of priority management. The diplomat's translator took a moment to process this. Your relative was the infamous zero-G repair incident human? Oh yeah. That's where we got the idea for the new emergency repair protocols. You know, the ones that made the Vulcan Safety Board have what humans call a collective aneurysm. The bartender's bioluminescence shifted to a pattern indicating resigned amusement. Is that why all human-designed emergency procedures now include the phrase, "This is going to sound crazy, but..." Partially. That and the Titan mining colony rescue. You know, when we figured out you could use industrial mining lasers as makeshift propulsion systems? I thought that was classified. The diplomat clicked nervously. Oh, the original incident is. The 347 safety regulations it spawned aren't. The human finished their flaming drink, which had finally extinguished itself. My personal favorite is Regulation 225.7b. The phrase, "Watch this," must be immediately reported to all relevant safety officers. The bartender began preparing another round of drinks. Don't forget Regulation 225.7c. Especially if spoken by a human. They all finished in unison. You know what I don't understand? The diplomat ventured, their sensor stalks swaying slightly from the effects of their drinks. Why do you humans insist on living in space at all? Surely staying on your death world would be safer. The human burst out laughing. Safer? Have you seen Earth? We've got these things called hurricanes that are basically angry wind trying to relocate everything that isn't bolted down. And sometimes the things that are bolted down. And sometimes the bolts. Don't forget earthquakes, the bartender added. Right. Sometimes the planet just decides to shake things up a bit. Or volcanoes. Those are fun. The ground occasionally decides to spew molten rock everywhere. And that's not even getting into the wildlife. The wildlife? The diplomat asked, despite their better judgment. Oh yeah, we've got these things called honey badgers that just don't care about anything. Pain, danger, logic. They're basically Earth's way of saying, what if we made an animal out of pure spite? The bartender's tentacles curled in recognition. Is that why the Galactic Zoo Association has them classified as approach at own risk, we mean it this time? Probably. Though that might also be because of the incident with the reinforced enclosure. Turns out, telling a honey badger something's escape-proof is like telling a human something's impossible. The human paused. Actually, that explains a lot about us as a species. Like the Dyson Swarm project? The bartender suggested. Exactly. Everyone said it was impossible to build a Dyson swarm with current technology, so naturally we started building one. Currently at 2.3% completion, and ahead of schedule. The diplomat's scales flickered in disbelief. But the energy requirements alone... Oh, that was the fun part. We figured out how to use the partial swarm to power the construction of the rest of it. Called it the bootstrap protocol. The math behind it made 3 different physics departments have to revise their fundamental theories. And this is normal? For humans? Normal? The human considered this. I guess. I mean, we did sort of speedrun our way through several technological ages because someone said faster-than-light travel was impossible, and we really wanted to prove them wrong. That's not exactly how it happened, the bartender interjected. No, you're right. We also wanted to pet alien dogs, or whatever the alien equivalent of dogs would be. Turns out, most spacefaring species don't keep pets, which is clearly an oversight we're working on correcting. The diplomat's sensor stalks twitched. Is that why there's now a galactic pet exchange program? Yep. Though we did have to add some guidelines after the incident with the metamorphic crystals of Betelgeuse Vive. The what? Turns out, if you love them enough, they develop sentience, which is amazing, but also means we had to rewrite a bunch of property laws, and add a new section to the Sentient Rights Charter, and create an entire educational system for newly awakened crystal beings. The bartender's tentacles waved in what might have been exasperation. Only humans would accidentally create a new form of sentient life through the power of friendship. To be fair, the human pointed out, nobody told us we couldn't, and they were just so sparkly. The diplomat's scales had taken on a pattern that their species used to indicate both amusement and existential dread. I'm beginning to understand why the Galactic Council added that addendum to the First Contact protocols. The one that says, if humanity expresses interest in your species' pets, prepare for rapid social evolution? No, the one that says do not under any circumstances tell humans something is against the laws of physics. They will take it as a challenge, and the physics department is tired of rewriting textbooks. The human grinned. In our defense, physics started it by having laws in the first place. We just prefer to treat them more like guidelines. Speaking of guidelines, the bartender interrupted, I believe it's time for last call. Station's rotating into night cycle. The human checked their chronometer and whistled. Oh, wow, yeah, I should probably head out. Got an early shift tomorrow helping install the new quantum communication arrays. We're trying to figure out if we can use entanglement to make faster-than-light internet possible. Didn't the Quantum Physics Council say that was theoretically impossible? The diplomat asked. The bartender's tentacles all face-palmed simultaneously. Oh no. Did they now? The human's grin took on a distinctly challenging edge. Well, that's interesting. Hey, you want to come watch? We're doing the first test run tomorrow at 0800 station time. Might make history, might break physics. Either way, should be fun. The diplomat looked at their empty glass, then at the human's eager expression, then back at their glass. Finally, their sensor stalks straightened with determination. You know what? Yes. Yes, I would like to watch humans casually violate the laws of physics before breakfast. That's the spirit. The humans stood, leaving payment for their drinks on the bar. Fair warning, though. You might want to bring a camera, and possibly a physics textbook for immediate revision. As they left, the bartender's bioluminescence pulsed with something between amusement and resignation. One tentacle reached for the station's public announcement system. Attention all residents. Humans will be attempting to violate causality at U800 hours. Please secure all temporal-sensitive items and be prepared for possible localized breaks in the space-time continuum. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Just another night, and possibly soon-to-be rewritten law of physics, in human space. The next morning, as the diplomat made their way to the quantum communications lab, they couldn't help but notice the unusually high number of different species gathering in the observation area. Their sensor stalks detected at least 12 distinct biological signatures, all radiating various levels of anticipation and concern. Quite a turnout, isn't it? A familiar voice called out. The human from the bar was now wearing what appeared to be standard scientific attire, though the diplomat noted with some alarm that they had accessorized it with something called a lucky quantum mechanics violation hat. Are all these beings here to watch the experiment? The diplomat asked, their scales shifting to a pattern indicating mild anxiety. Oh no, most of them are here to document it. See that group over there? The human pointed to a cluster of beings frantically calibrating various measuring devices. That's the Physics Verification Committee. They're here to officially document any laws of physics we might break. The ones behind them are from the Temporal Paradox Prevention Office. And the ones in the corner? Insurance adjusters. Standard procedure for any human experiment. They've learned to arrive early and get good seats. The diplomat's translator took a moment to process this. You have insurance for breaking physics? Of course! It's called a reality deviation policy. Pretty standard these days for any human research facility. Covers everything from accidental dimension breaching to temporary violations of causality. And the human adjusted their hat. Though there was that one incident where we had to add spontaneous development of consciousness in inanimate objects to the coverage. The crystal incident? No, actually. This was with a coffee maker in the Lunar Research Station. Turns out if you hook up an AI-assisted beverage dispenser to a quantum computer, sometimes it develops opinions about proper brewing temperatures. Before the diplomat could process this information, a series of lights began flashing, and a calm voice announced over the station's communication system. Attention all observers. Quantum communication experiment beginning in 5 minutes. Please ensure all reality anchors are activated and all paradox shields are at full power. The human grinned. Want to come see it up close? I've got an extra set of quantum-shielded goggles. The diplomat's scales rippled with indecision for approximately 2 seconds before curiosity won out. Will it be safe? Probably. We're about 60% sure nothing will explode, and if it does, it'll only explode in 3 dimensions at once, Max. That's reassuring? That's the spirit. Come on, let me show you how we're planning to make the laws of physics cry. As they followed the human into the lab, the diplomat couldn't help but notice the various warning signs posted on the walls. Their particular favorite read, "Caution, Schrodinger's cat was here, probably." The lab itself was a marvel of organized chaos. Machines that shouldn't logically be able to exist hummed in harmony with devices that seemed to occupy several spaces at once. In the center, a complex array of crystals and quantum processors formed what the human cheerfully described as a reality persuasion matrix. The basic idea, the human explained, adjusting some controls, is that if we can't make information travel faster than light, we'll just convince this specific section of spacetime that light speed isn't all that important anyway. But That's not how reality works, the diplomat protested weakly. Yet, the human corrected with a wink. That's not how reality works yet. Give us about... They checked their chronometer. 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Around them, other humans moved with practiced efficiency, calling out readings and making adjustments to equipment that seemed to occasionally phase in and out of existence. You know what the really fun part is? The human continued, hands flying over a control panel that appeared to be processing calculations in 5 different number systems simultaneously. If this works, we're going to have to rewrite every textbook on quantum mechanics. Again. Again? Oh yeah, this would be the 3rd time this year. There's actually a standing joke in the physics department about keeping textbooks in pencil. They paused to adjust something that looked suspiciously like a modified toaster. Though to be fair, the 2nd time was technically an accident. We were trying to make better toast and accidentally proved that quantum tunneling could be used for bread preparation. The diplomat's sensor stalks twitched. You discovered a new principle of quantum mechanics while making breakfast? To be fair, it was really good toast. Also, we finally figured out why some bread always lands butter side down. Turns out it's not just bad luck. There's actually a quantum field interaction involved. We call it the breakfast uncertainty principle. Before the diplomat could respond to this revelation, a series of lights began pulsing across the control panels, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with possibility. Here we go, the human announced cheerfully. Reality violation in 3, 2, 1. The diplomat's sensor stalks registered a sensation that their species had no words for, as if the very fabric of space-time had briefly decided to try on a different outfit just to see how it looked. Ha! The human exclaimed triumphantly. Take that, causality! In the observation room, the Physics Verification Committee was having what appeared to be a collective existential crisis. 3 of them were already frantically rewriting equations on their tablets, while 2 more seemed to be seriously reconsidering their career choices. Did it work? The diplomat asked, trying to ignore the way their scales were showing colors they hadn't previously been capable of displaying. Define work, the human replied, still grinning. Did we successfully transmit information faster than light? Yes. Did we technically create a localized bubble of altered space-time, where the normal laws of physics are more like polite suggestions? Also yes. Did we accidentally prove that reality is significantly more flexible than previously thought? Absolutely yes. They gestured at a display showing what appeared to be real-time communication with a station on the other side of the galaxy. But more importantly, we can now send memes across interstellar distances with 0 lag, which, let's be honest, was the real goal all along. The diplomats stared at the display, their sensor stalks rigid with disbelief. You violated the fundamental laws of physics? To reduce lag in interstellar communications? Well, yeah. Do you know how frustrating it is to wait 3 years for someone to respond to your cat videos? In the background, the Physics Verification Committee had moved from existential crisis to active debate, with one member waving what appeared to be a blank sheet of paper labeled New Laws of Physics, Draft 1, subject to human interference. The human adjusted their lucky quantum mechanics violation hat, which was now glowing slightly. You know what the best part is? This is just the prototype. Wait until you see what we're planning for version 2.0. There's going to be a version 2.0? The diplomat asked, their scales shifting to a pattern that suggested they weren't sure whether to be terrified or impressed. Of course. We're thinking of adding a feature that lets you high-five someone across the galaxy. You know, for science. At that moment, the station's AI made an announcement. Attention all personnel. Reality has been successfully violated according to schedule. Normal physics will resume in approximately 5 minutes, or whenever the quantum field feels like cooperating. Also, the cafeteria will be serving celebratory We Broke Physics Again cake in the main dining area. The human brightened. Ooh, cake! Want to come? It's specially designed to be safe for all known species. We had to bend a few laws of biochemistry to make that work. But hey, what's one more violated universal constant between friends? The diplomat looked at their chronometer, then at the still glowing quantum communication array, then at the Physics Verification Committee, now engaged in what appeared to be a passionate debate about whether to just give up and let humans rewrite the laws of physics as they saw fit, and made a decision. Yes, they said firmly. I believe I would like to try this physics violation cake. That's the spirit. And hey, if you're interested, next week we're testing a new theory about using quantum entanglement to make better coffee. The Temporal Paradox Prevention Office is already booking seats for that one. As they made their way to the cafeteria, followed by a stream of still bewildered physicists, the diplomat couldn't help but reflect that perhaps their species' first contact protocols needed updating again. Specifically, they needed to add a new section. When humans offer to show you something impossible, say yes. The cake is usually worth it. The end.